Well, I appreciate the opportunity to come back and talk a little bit about franchising. I think this is a topic that gets somewhat underrepresented in the world of business. And what I'd like to be able to do today is just hopefully open your eyes to different opportunities in franchising and then give you a bit of a framework for how to start evaluating the industry and different opportunities. So we're going to frame this as a series of FAQs. So I'm going to present some of the common questions that I'm asked as a franchising expert, and we'll dig into those. And I welcome any questions that you have from the audience that's here live as well as the online. Allison, you'll handle the cue me if there's any questions online. Very good. Okay, so I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes just to introduce myself, and then we'll dig right into the frequently asked questions. And then at the end, we can talk a little bit about questions that you have, if there's anything in addition. All right. So just in way of background. So I have been a business owner in a multitude of different ways for the past 25 years. So I've really had three different paths that I've chosen to pursue in my career in terms of business ownership. I started by acquiring companies and then stepping in as an active CEO in those businesses. And I completed three unique business acquisitions. Each of those had an add-on acquisition attached to them. And I was in that capacity as a leader and a day-to-day CEO for about 15 years. In 2011, I invested in my first franchise business, which is really the topic du jour. And for the last, now 15 years, I have owned multiple franchises. And for 9 of those years, I was also an active franchise consultant. So I was advising others who were looking to invest in franchise businesses, helping them to find the right opportunity for them. In addition to that, I've also become an investor in multiple businesses where I'm just a passive participant in the business. That's where I've started to pivot more of my attention over the past handful of years, is to becoming an investor and a active board member. All right, so that hopefully gives you a little bit of background. I think it's important for you to understand I'm a CPA by training. Started my career at Arthur Andersen many gray hairs ago. And so when I approach business problems, I typically do that in a very quantitative way. And so a lot of what we're going to talk about today, I try to frame these questions in terms of return on investment and risk tolerance and things like that, because that's the way that my brain works. But I think it's a helpful framework as you start to evaluate franchises to be able to look at it both qualitatively, but I think there's an important element of quantitative analysis that has to go into judging whether a particular opportunity is good for you or not. All right. Now, to be clear, I'm here today and I've taught at Tepper for 18 years. Okay. So I've been around this building for an awfully long time. I come back here because I'm truly passionate about helping people to explore business ownership. It matters less to me what path you choose to pursue. It is extremely important to me that people open their eyes to becoming business owners, because I'm a firm believer that business ownership, whether it is through starting up your own business or acquiring a franchise or going through a business acquisition, doesn't matter the path to me. I'm firmly committed that this is a more rewarding path in your career. It's more professionally rewarding and challenging. It can be more financially rewarding. It's also more personally fulfilling. And so I'm here to advocate today for franchising, but in general for business ownership. Okay. All right. So let's dig into the heart of the content today. So in my years as a franchise consultant, people would always ask me franchising questions, and it boils down pretty quickly to a handful of questions. So what we're going to do today is address each of those questions and really, hopefully at that point, give you a more detailed understanding of how you evaluate franchises and what makes a good or bad opportunity for people. All right. So this is question number one all the time. If I'm at a party and somebody says, oh, you do franchising. You mean like fill in the blank food brand, McDonald's, Dunkin', doesn't matter. Okay. So the answer is yes, there are a lot of food franchises. However, what I want to do is I want to start opening your mind to other non-food related franchise businesses. And I want you to start thinking about a broader array of options. All right. So I have on the screen just a few. There's 4 different industry spaces here that when you think about them, you might not initially say franchise. But I want you to realize how pervasive the franchising world is in our economy today. So the automotive industry is packed with franchises. All right. So Meineke, Jiffy Lube, Maaco, Amco are all franchises. But in addition to that, all the new car dealerships, Ford, Toyota, all the GM brands, Honda, those are all franchises. They're very complex, expensive, large investment franchises, but that is exactly what they are. Likewise, there are business services franchises. Okay, so I own 2 purely B2B franchises. One is a supporting strategies franchise, which provides outsourced bookkeeping and accounting services. It's a franchise. All right. Healthcare, you might not initially think of as a franchise brand, but if we set aside hospitals for a minute, a lot of the personal services businesses in the healthcare industry are actually franchise brands. So many of the brands related to hearing aids, franchised. Nearly all of the in-home care companies, Synergy, Right at Home, Comfort Care, Comfort Keepers, they're all franchise brands. So this is a segment that is growing dramatically and is really very prevalent. And then the last one that I'll mention to you, which has been an enormous growth space over the last 10 years, is personal care services. All right. So this is anything related to fitness or beauty. All right. So fitness brands, right? If you think about this, this is anything from a Planet Fitness to a Club Pilates, Cycle Bar, all of those brands are franchised. But equally, there's a bunch of beauty brands that are franchised. Massage Envy, European Wax Center, Deca Lash, Amazing Lash, dozens of these brands. So I don't want you to necessarily be scared off from franchising because you think it's all related to food. There are a multitude of opportunities that don't have anything to do with being in a quick serve restaurant. Okay. Now, this is the second question that people ask, and they usually kind of lean in on this when they're like, the answer is yes. So let's talk about this. When we talk about the income opportunity in franchising, okay, I think it's important to talk about 2 related topics. So the first one is, what's the total income opportunity from that particular franchise brand? But the second one, equally important, is how quickly can I start making money? Those are 2 completely different subjects. All right. So let's dig into each of those for a minute. All right. Here's the way I break down income possibilities. Can you make $50,000 a year from a franchise? Yes. Are there some where you can make $100,000 a year? Yes. Are there some franchise businesses where you can make a real $250,000 income? Yes, is the answer to all of that. Okay. The importance of going from 1 to 2 to 3 and growing your income is you have to figure out, how am I going to scale this business from small to medium to large? Okay. And I think that one of the keys of what many people pursue in the world of franchising in order to grow and scale their income is they look at the opportunity to become a multi-unit owner. So let's use a really simple example of this. Let's assume that you decided you wanted to own a fitness business. Okay. So you were going to go out, you're going to own a single Club Pilates studio. Okay, great. Your income opportunity at that single studio is probably limited to $100,000 or $150,000 a year total. That's your net profit cap in that business. So if you say that's great, but now I'd like more income, how do you do that? You open a second studio or a third studio or a fourth studio. And now, all of a sudden, you start paving the way to, over time, a significantly growing income opportunity. Okay, now, to be clear, that business becomes more complicated to own and operate. You now have multiple landlords that you have to deal with. You have more employees, you have more customer challenges, right? So it is more complicated, but if the objective is to grow a larger income stream, that is available to you, even if on a per unit, per box basis, the income opportunity is smaller. Okay? This opportunity toward multi-unit ownership is really, I think, the hidden gem that people who don't really dig into and understand franchising miss, because they think that a single unit is all that you're really looking at. I want you to look at the opportunity to build a scalable business. Okay, now, the second element of this income question is how quickly do you make money? All right. So what I have on the screen is 3 different A/B choices. All right. One of the ABs is quicker cash flow. The other is slower cash flow. All right. So the first, if you step into a business where you are going to be the day-to-day driver, you're going to be the owner operator of that business, it is likely that you will reach cash flow positive sooner because you have fewer other people on your payroll and more income available for you. Likewise, a service-based business is going to become profitable faster than a brick and mortar retail business. Because in a brick and mortar retail business, you have a lot more capital investment that had to go in. You have rent that you have to pay, utilities you have to pay, maintenance you have to pay. That if you're in a pure service business, you can avoid all of those expenses. Allows you to grow to profitability faster. The third one may not be as intuitive, but I will point out to you, having a business where you're selling directly to consumers is going to be profitable faster than a B2B business. Simply because the sales cycle in most B2B opportunities is just extended, right? I mean, I run on a day-to-day basis a B2B franchise, and my sales cycle in that business on average is 4 to 5 months, not 4 to 5 days. So all of these, if you put these together, being an owner operator, operating a service business that's selling directly to consumers, when you piece those 3 together, that would be a path to move to profit faster. All right. I'm going to pause there for a second. Any questions, Allison? Nothing online? Anything from the live audience? Yes, go ahead.
So is it service as a software SaaS or just pure consulting?
Yeah, it's a good question. So service could mean, the question was to clarify what I mean by service-based businesses. So I'll give you an example. Service businesses can certainly be something that is a SaaS business, right? Something that's B2B. I would propose to you that service businesses could also be home services, a painting business, or an HVAC servicing company, or a plumbing maintenance company. Those are all franchise brands that are services based, but are B2C, right? So there's a pretty broad array of service businesses in the franchising world. Yes.
Some brand opened a plumbing service business, and then you saw that market, and you're like, I can do the same thing somewhere else.
That's exactly right. Yes. So there might be, for example, I'll use CertaPro Painters as an example, a very successful brand in the painting world, right? They have hundreds of locations across the country, but there are pockets where they don't have franchise owners, but they have market opportunities. So there's an opportunity for you to say, look, I see this space. I think I could run a successful business in this world. What markets are available to me? And they're going to present you with this inventory of, here's all the markets that are available. And so now you can pick and choose which of those might be the right one for you.
They give you the markets and you just go operate and...
Well, I mean, you have to make your investment, but they're going to present you with the market opportunities of what's available to you. That's right. Yeah. All right. Now, let's talk about the flip side of this income equation, right? So we looked at the income of what's the income opportunity and how quickly does it occur? I also now want to take a look at what's the investment required to move into a franchise. All right. So when people ask me this question, the answer is it's hard for me to tell you. It's very similar to you asking me, Chris, how much does it cost to buy a house? What depends on what you want to buy. All right. So what I will tell you in the franchise world, there are very successful franchises where your total investment is $50,000. Great. There are very successful franchises where your investment required is $3 million. There is, what's that? There's not a correlation here. There are good and bad brands at both ends of this income perspective. All right, there really are. So what I want you to understand is this is the median. Most franchise brands, the investment required is somewhere between $100,000 and $250,000. Okay, that's the heart of the opportunities. There's some investments on both ends of that, but the majority of them are in that $100,000 to $250,000 range. Now, let's talk about what that means. What that means is for you to start and operate the business requires total capital of $100,000 to $250,000. That does not include your personal living expenses, paying your rent or your mortgage, your car payment, your school loans, putting food on the table and gas in the car while you're ramping the business up. That is incremental required investment. The $100,000 to $250,000 is what's required for the business, not to support your lifestyle. Okay. So that's a big number. We're going to talk in a couple of minutes about how people go about financing that, but I want you to understand that there's a really wide range, but most of them fall into that $100,000 to $250,000 range. Okay, now let's talk about financing. So I will draw this example for you. All right. Financing a franchise investment, in my opinion, I want you to be in the mindset that it is identical to going out and investing in a house. Most people who buy a house have a down payment, and then they take a mortgage to supplement so that they can buy a bigger house, knowing that they're making an investment and they'll pay it off over time. All right. Most people who invest in a franchise structure that financing in a very similar way. So let's talk about this. In most franchise investments, you will find that the investor who's going to start that business is going to place a down payment that's equal typically to about 30% of the total investment. And then they're going to supplement that by borrowing the remaining 70%. Now, the 30%, it could be as low as 10. It could be as high as 100. So there's not a right or wrong answer. What I will tell you is less down payment equals more risk, right? That's very simple for you to understand because you're going to have more leverage. And on a month-to-month basis, you're going to have a larger note payment that you need to make to the bank. And the bank is unforgiving. When the bank's note is due, they expect to be paid. And if they don't, then you're going to run into a whole bunch of collateral problems that they're going to come asking a lot of questions. All right. So to the extent that you can take less loan on the business, it's going to put you in a generally safer place, a more stable, less risky position. Okay. Now, I want to talk about each of these components. Let's talk about the equity investment, and then I want to talk about the loan piece. All right. First, on the equity investment, there are really three different ways that most people choose to finance the equity injection in the business. Okay. The first, you may have saved up money that you're looking to invest in a business. Great. That is the simplest path to follow, has the least kind of risk attached to it because you've got this money, you've been saving it, putting it into a nest egg, and now you're going to invest it in your franchise. Great. Okay, that's option one. Option two, you can take money that is in a qualified retirement account. in your 401k or in your IRA, and I want to be crystal clear about this. I'm putting on my CPA hat now. All right. You're not withdrawing the money. So this is not going to be a taxable event for you. You are doing a direct investment. Your 401k or your IRA account is going to directly invest in your franchise business. The account, the 401k or the IRA, is going to own the business. So it's not a withdrawal. It's not a taxable event. It is a direct investment. That is a path that a lot of people choose because they've had these long, successful corporate careers where over time they've built up these enormous 401k accounts. This is a viable option to be able to use some of that to invest in their own business. Okay, option 3, they find a partner. Also a great way to pursue this because there are a lot of partners out there who have capital available to invest, and what they want is to work with a motivated, talented professional who wants to run the business, but is short on cash. And you've got these financial partners who are very cash rich, but they're at a different part of their career. Maybe they already own a successful business or two. Maybe they're older in their career and they don't want to dive back in, but they want to invest and have the financial upside. So finding a partner is also a completely viable way to pursue finding this equity injection. All right, so just to recap, a lot of different choices here of how to fund this equity injection. All right, now let's look at the loan options. All right, general statement. Banks are very comfortable with lending into franchises because they can look at that franchise brand and they can see, even though you're new as a franchisee, they can look at other people who have operated that exact same business and see the track record of success from other people operating it. So it gives them a greater sense of security than if you were starting a business from scratch. All right. So banks in general love to invest in franchises. It seems to them safer than investing in other startup businesses. Okay. Now, so within this bank world, right, most lenders who are going to lend, they're going to structure these as a small business administration loan. All right. Gives them more safety because there's a government guarantee attached to that. Right. But in addition to that, I want you to realize there's other lending options available. If you own a house and you have all kinds of equity built up in your house, you can certainly leverage that equity through a line of credit and borrow against your house to fund and lend that into the business. That's an option. The other piece of it is if you have this investment portfolio that's outside of your retirement account, you can also take a margin loan against that and use that as collateral. Okay. So mountain of options with regard to financing, both options for you as well as others willing to invest in your business. All right. So let's pause there for a second. Other questions that have come up, Allison, anything online? No? Anyone in the room want to ask any questions about the financing? Yes. That's okay. Go ahead.
But are you setting the stage for you creating something to be a franchise or you take a franchise?
Great question. So this discussion and how we're framing this is there is an existing franchise that already exists. You're now buying a single unit, or in some cases, multi-units of that, and opening a new location for an existing brand. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yes.
How do you find a partner? How do you find someone?
That's a great question. So in most instances, you're leaning into your network, right? So you're sitting today in a building that has a gazillion people revolving around this infrastructure who are investors who are looking for deals. So the more time that you spend starting to talk to people in this community and introducing your idea and asking them, who do you know who might be interested in this? You'll little by little start finding people who are interested. So I think that the search for a financing partner is almost always related to networking and just starting to build out your personal community.
You still own majority of your franchise at least, even, I mean, from the bank, it's not an equity, right? So you still, your equity to pay them back. Partly you might lose some of your equity.
Correct, that's right.
How are those usually structured? Is it like, because the equity is not really in the brand, it's in the franchise, so maybe an investor gonna invest it. So do they take profit out of the franchise?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example, right? In the supporting strategies business that I started, I have a business partner. Yeah. I put in all of the money, he put in all of the effort. Okay, so I spend, I can't say zero time, but minimal amount of time every month on the business. He dedicates his full-time career effort to that. He put in $0 of investment, I put in all the cash. We are 50-50 partners in that business. So you can look at that either way. Either I took 50 for not doing anything, or he took 50 for not putting a penny in. It was equally good for both of us. We've built a big, successful business, and we are equal partners. So at the end of the year, whatever profit is left in the business, we each take half of it. Yeah. Does that help? Okay. Yes. So that's a very good question. So we're going to come, if you'll pause on that question, it's so good that I have a question for it in the slideshow. All right. Okay, we'll get to that. And then as you look through that, if you have more details, we'll dig in. Okay. Yes.
Are there any forms of financing that look attractive, but you would just highly suggest don't?
I think that if you have a partner, right, that's trying to drive too hard of a bargain with you, I would think that that may end up being something that just isn't attractive, right? They might try to take an excessive share of the business in exchange for their investment, and that's just not equitable, I don't believe. So in general, if you're working with a bank or other financial institution, those are pretty cut and dry industry normal terms. And you're not going to be finding anything that is really out of whack. Okay. Okay. All right. This to me is the most important question of all. So if you own a franchise, what do you actually do all day? All right. Like in my instance, I'm sitting here talking to you at 12:30 on a Thursday, right? Okay. So let's talk about what you actually do. All right. To answer that question, I think it's important to understand that in a franchise, there are really three completely distinct operating models. And based on which of these models that franchise requires of you, you're going to have a very different engagement level with the business. Okay. So I want to talk for a minute about owner operators. Then we're going to pivot and talk about what I define as an executive owner. And then finally, I want to move to talking about semi-absentee owners. All right. Okay. Let's talk about owner operators for a minute. The owner operator, the way I would frame this to you is the owner operator shows up to the office in the morning, right? And when they arrive at the office and they're driving their car, the hat that they have on says owner. When they arrive at the business, they take that hat off and they set it on the seat and they put on a different hat, which says general manager. They then walk into the building, and when they walk in, they are now directly interacting with the customers. They're directly interacting with the employees. They're directly interacting with the suppliers and the vendors. They are the hub of all of the activity in that business every single day. So to give you an example, my sister owns a Bloom & Blinds franchise. All right. So this is a franchise that does window coverings in people's homes. All right. She is the business. When the phone rings, she answers it. When a customer needs a sales call, she goes. When they want to order something, she's the one measuring, ordering, receiving, and installing. All right. That's an owner operator in the business. Okay. That's a business that can be very profitable because you have next to no overhead. You have a limited number of employees. And as long as it's a business that you enjoy operating, it can be really successful for you. Okay. And super simple because you don't have employees and you can manage and cultivate the business to be what you want. Now, the flip side, it's also really difficult to scale because you don't have employees. You are doing everything. So now, take a look at a different model, an executive owner model. So now you pull up to the car, you pull up in your car, you take off your owner hat. This time, you're not putting on a hat that says general manager. This time, the hat just has those famous 3 letters on the top. Just says CEO. Because now when you're stepping into the business, the phone rings and it's a customer, somebody else answers it. Vendor comes in and they want to call on somebody, they're talking to a team member of yours. Customers are having challenges, they're talking to somebody else. Your job as an executive owner, now you are managing a team of people. You're setting strategy, you're doing financial management. You're managing the business, not doing the business. All right. So an example of this would be ServPro. All right. So ServPro is a business where they do disaster restoration in people's homes. Okay. Fire in your house, ServPro comes in after the fire company has come and put everything out. They are ripping out drywall, taking out carpeting, making things back to the way they were. The owner of ServPro is not in your basement squeegeeing water. They are not taking wet carpet and throwing it into a dumpster. What are they doing? What that ServPro owner is doing is they're cultivating relationships with referral partners. They're developing relationships with plumbers to do work. They are managing the subcontractors that you're going to work with in the business. They're managing the financial aspects of the business. That's what they're doing. They're leading this business as a leader, not as a doer. Okay? These businesses can be highly scalable because if you want to grow more, you build and cultivate team, you hire more people, pick up more customers, and now you've got a growing business. Okay? Now, the third model that I want to talk about is completely different. All right? The third model is you drive up to the business with your hat on that says owner, and you look at the business and then you keep on driving. Okay? In a semi-absentee model, you are only the owner. From day one, from minute one, you hire a manager who's going to manage the day-to-day operations of that business. They are going to hire and train and supervise the other employees. They're going to manage the marketing campaign of the business. They are going to manage all of the employee and customer challenges. Your interaction with that business is going to be part-time. Your responsibilities are 2. Manage the manager, manage the numbers. So you're going to manage the financial aspects, and you're also going to manage the other operating KPIs of the business so that you can keep track of whether your manager is doing what he or she is supposed to be doing. All right. So this, a great example of this is any haircutting business. Supercuts, great clips, sport clips, cost cutters, pick one, doesn't matter. They're all exactly the same. The owners of those businesses are not hairstylists. The owners of those businesses look like me. They are executives who own businesses and are investors. You do not want me cutting your hair. Promise. But I could very successfully own a whole series of hair salons. Because what I'm really good at is building and leading teams and managing financials and managing KPIs. I'm good at those. And that's what you need to be good at to manage a semi-absentee business. Okay. So these are all 3 really different operating models. So when you start evaluating a franchise, one of the first questions that you need to ask yourself, do you want to be an owner-operator? Do you want to be an executive owner? Or do you want to just look at the business, wave, and keep on driving and be semi-absentee? They can all be successful, and at different junctures of your career, it might be the right model for you. Okay? Now, this is one of the hardest questions that people have to face when they evaluate business ownership, okay? Which is, I don't like, I've never done, or I'm scared to death to do sales. Okay, let's talk about that. All right, okay. There's choices. All right. Choice number one is the business that I own and operate today, right? I own an Era Group franchise. I am the sales. I'm completely comfortable with that. I'm good enough at it that I've been successful at it. If you're comfortable being the salesperson, it opens up a whole array of options to you. Great. That's option one. Option two, you may say, look, I don't want to do sales, but I would be very comfortable leading a team of salespeople. They're going out, they're making the presentations, they're driving it firsthand, and I'm managing and leading them. Great. There's other franchises that look just like that. Most importantly is number three. The vast majority of franchise businesses do not require any active sales effort. So my example for this is one of my favorite franchise brands for a whole multitude of reasons, primarily the product, is Dunkin'. All right. When was the last time you saw a Dunkin' salesperson? Never is the answer, right? Because they don't have salespeople. They have a really good marketing campaign. They just spent $8 million on their Super Bowl ad, which got a lot of play, right? It's all marketing driven. The vast majority of franchises actually pursue strategy number three. They are entirely marketing driven. There is very little to no direct sales effort required. So I want to break this barrier down for you. When you think about owning a franchise, I want you to understand that the vast majority of theirs do not require you to be an experienced, active, or happy salesperson. Most of them, you can lean into a successful marketing strategy and build a very successful business. Yes, please go ahead.
If I own a Dunkin' franchise, this is the Dunkin' and you that does the marketing campaign on Super Bowl. I still get the traffic. So how does the money work over there?
Yeah, good question. So in most franchise brands, right, there's a marketing collective. So every franchisee typically pays into two marketing funds. One, they pay into a national marketing fund, so Dunkin', so that they can run Super Bowl ads and all these other national campaigns. In addition, they contribute to a local marketing co-op, billboards, community activities, things like that. So it's organized by others. You are partially funding it, but your money's being pooled with everybody else's in order to execute the strategy. Okay? Yes. Great question. So franchisors always have money that flows back to them. Yes, they're not doing this for free. So the money that flows to a franchisor is typically in two different streams. Okay, the first, when you initially buy your franchise territory, you're going to pay to the franchisor what is literally called a franchise fee or a licensing fee, which is you are buying the rights to operate a business in some exclusive territory. Okay, that's one. That is typically a one-time only payment. Okay. Then once you start operating your business, every month, you're going to pay a portion of your revenue, not profit, revenue, back to the franchisor, and that is labeled as a royalty. And so the purpose of that is you're paying them for ongoing support. but you're also paying them essentially for the right to continue to operate in that exclusive territory. So a one-time only franchise fee up front, and then an ongoing royalty that is a percentage of revenue. So just to be clear, I'm going to answer the question you didn't ask, which is you pay the royalty whether you're profitable or not. If you're selling something, you're paying them. Even if that means you're losing money, you're still paying them. Okay? All right. All right. So this is the question that you asked me earlier, which is, what's the best franchise? All right. So this is, I drew kind of a little bit of a funny statement earlier, right? Which is, how much does the house cost, right? This is the same as you asking me, what's the best restaurant in Pittsburgh? Well, it depends. What do you want to eat? Right? Okay. So when we go through this, it's really a process of figuring out what's the right business for you. Okay. So here's what I'm going to tell you are the criteria that I would recommend you think through. All right. There's 4 primary criteria that you're going to see on the left-hand side. All right. We talked about what is the owner's role in the business. Owner operator, executive owner, semi-absentee. We talked about the sales and marketing role. And we also talked about both of the financial aspects, right? Which is how much capital do you or your partners have to contribute? And how much income are you seeking? Okay. Those are the primary criteria. Now, there's a whole mountain of secondary criteria. Okay. Do you want to be in Pittsburgh? Do you want to be in Honolulu? Do you want to be who knows where? Where the location? Is there territory available? All right. Do you like employees or not like employees? All right. This guy right here, do not like employees. All right. I prefer businesses that are very employee light because it's just simpler for me. My business partner, whose name is also Chris, he's a very good leader of people, which is great because I can trust him to do that well, not my strength. So we complement each other in that way. Okay. Do you have an industry preference? So for example, I have 0 industry preference. In my career, I've owned a printing company. I've owned a medical device company, a healthcare staffing company, a bookkeeping and accounting business, a tax preparation franchise, an eyelash extension studio, and a property management business. I don't care about industry. What I care about is the profit model and the scalability opportunity. Okay. You may look at this and say, I have a deep love for fill in the blank. Great. If that's an important criteria to you, we honor that. Okay. And then the last one that I think is very important to consider is what's the maturity of the brand, right? Brand maturity is a really big issue. All right. I prefer brands, and maybe it's because I'm a bit older in my career and I'm a bit more risk averse than I was 10 or 15 years ago. I prefer brands that have a longer track record of success than I would have 10 or 15 years ago. The trade-off to that is there's often the really good markets are gone. Somebody else who was an early adopter invested in those. And so now I don't have a choice of all the markets. I have a choice of some of the markets. That's a trade-off. Okay. This is the evaluation criteria that you use to choose what the best business is for you. Now, what I'm going to tell you is you can go online, you can Google search, and you can do what is the best franchise? And you're going to get, Google's going to spit out 10 million different answers to that. Okay. And all of those are typically sponsored listings, which means an organization, a magazine, or somebody else went out and they got 50 companies who are willing to pay them $10,000 each to be on the top blank list. Don't trust those. Those are just paid advertisements. Okay. Now, what I am going to tell you, there are 3 sources that I will tell you are better. Okay. 1, Entrepreneur Magazine every January they publish what they call the Franchise 500. This is their evaluation of the most successful franchise brands in the United States. Okay. You can look at the criteria and you can kind of argue, it's okay, it's fine, but it's at least some objective measure. Nobody can pay to play. Okay. My opinion, the second source, Forbes, every other year, they do a fascinating piece. They do a piece which is the best and worst franchises in America. It's great. Like the companies that end up on that worst list are mortified. It is very objective data. So I think that's a really good one. Now, the third thing that I'll mention to you, there's an organization in the franchise world called Franchise Business Review. This is a organization, and what they do is that they conduct very deep interviews within a franchise brand. Not mandatory. So a franchise company actually has to pay Franchise Business Review to conduct a review. All right. Now, once the franchise brand writes the check and says, do the review, there is a brick wall that is erected, and the franchisor has nothing to do with the rest of the process. Franchise Business Review then starts talking to the franchisees one at a time and interviewing them. When they publish their study, they don't give it to the franchisor before they release it to the public. They just release it. Franchisor has no idea what people said. They have no idea if it's going to go well or go poorly. So that, in my opinion, is one of the best sources of information because it is very detailed and completely objective. All right. Okay. All right. Let's take a look at success rates. All right. Because I think this is important to understand. There's 2,500, 3,000 active franchise brands in the United States. Like they're everywhere. If you walk through Oakland, walk through Shadyside, walk through Squirrel Hill, it's franchise, franchise, franchise. You just start pointing them out. They're everywhere. Okay. Every one of these franchise brands every year publishes what's called an FDD, a franchise disclosure document. All right. And this document is essentially a series of required disclosures that they need to publish every year. Okay. One of these, item 20. Item 20 gives you, for the past 3 years, the success rate of the brand. It says, here's how many units were open at the beginning of the year. Here's how many new units opened. Here's how many units closed or were transferred to another owner. And it does that for the preceding 3 years. And so you have an opportunity to be able to gauge the success of that brand. I think that's a really objective measure of success. Yes, please.
I don't recall. Do you have to pay to get the?
No, the FDDs are completely free. Yep. All right. If you're going to go out and do a franchise investigation, what does this look like? Like, how do you actually start exploring a brand, right? Okay. Here's what I would tell you as a general flow, right? You're going to start having conversations with a franchisor at a very high level, all right? I'm telling you that when you have that foundational calls, 2, 3, 4, 5, conversations with a franchisor, you are going to think that this is the greatest opportunity that has ever been presented to anyone ever. They're going to tell you all the good and none of the bad. And you're going to leave those conversations just feeling like, this has got to be my future. All right. I should pause, harness that excitement, because then what I want you to do is move into phase 2. Phase 2 is the most important phase. You're going to now take all of that information that you learned from the franchisor, and you're going to go now and start fire testing it. You're going to go and start talking to current franchisees who are actually running that business every day. And you're going to say, okay, the franchisor told me A, B, and C. Do you agree? And they're going to say A, 100% agree. B, 100% agree. C, they lied to you. And they're going to then start spilling the beans and telling you, hey, they said this. This has been my real experience. Okay. So I want you to understand when you go through this, it's a combination of learning from the franchisor, but then testing by validating it with the current franchisees. Okay. Then, yes, please go ahead.
I would be the first person to take the franchise.
Very good question. You are a very brave soul. So look, what I will tell you is there are some people who are early adopters in franchise brands. Okay. They don't have that validation phase available to them. So at that point, what you're really doing is you are placing a tremendous amount of trust in the franchisor that what they've represented to you, that they've built, you're going to be able to duplicate. It is. I've been involved in a lot of franchises in my career, and I will tell you that the early adopters have a very polar experience. They either have a giant success or a complete failure. There is really no middle ground when you're an early adopter.
But does it give you an edge in negotiating the price?
Great question. So this is a very good question. I'm glad you've asked that. In the franchise world, there is a very prevalent, one of the core tenets of franchising is equity. Okay. Every franchisee in a system is treated completely equitably. They pay the same royalty rates. They contribute the same amount to the marketing program. They have the exact same rights and responsibilities, everybody in the system. So when there is no negotiating with a franchisor to get a lower price, lower royalty. That does not exist. There is complete equity among all of the franchisees that they have exactly the same terms. Yes.
The franchise fee, the one-time fee could be a lot lower for early adopter.
No. Nope. It just doesn't exist. The advantage of being an early adopter is you have a better choice of prime markets. Like, let's be honest, the Dallas market or Nashville are better markets for a lot of franchises than Pittsburgh. Growing population, younger population, more affluent population, right? There's a lot of reasons why some of those markets are better than others. The early adopters are going to pick off the prime markets. Charlotte, Nashville, Denver, LA, like I can list 8 or 10 of them. Pittsburgh's like 58th on the list, right? It's not to say it's can't succeed here. It's to say that you probably don't have as much upside. The early adopters get to choose the prime markets.
And in the same sense, because you're new to the business, it's not as proven as it was. I mean, any other franchise is. So the bank might not be willing to award you.
The bank is going to be a bit more hesitant if you're one of the first adopters. Yes, that's correct. That's right. All right. All right. So look, if you're thinking about investing in a franchise, right? I brought this analogy up before, and I think it is true here. Think about this the same way you would if you're going to buy a house. Okay? You're going to set your basic search criteria. If you're looking for a house, you're going to say, hey, I need this number of bedrooms. I want a yard. I want a garden. I want a drive, whatever it is, right? In the franchise world, your primary screening criteria are what ownership model do you want? What activity level in sales and marketing do you want? How much capital do you want to invest? How much income are you seeking, right? Those are your primary search criteria. Then you start looking. You start saying, okay, I'm going to cast my net out. What, when I look in the marketplace, fits my primary search criteria? And then you start digging in deep and actually start talking to the companies in detail. All right. This is a process that takes months and months, not weeks and weeks, because it's important for you to look at a lot. When my wife and I, we moved into the house that we're in now in 2017. But prior to moving into that house, we looked for that house for 18 months And we probably walked through 25 different houses. Actually did a tour of 25 houses to find the one that was the one. Okay? I'm telling you that it's important for you to look at a lot of different opportunities because you're not going to know what a good one looks like until you see a bunch of bad ones. There's just no way to do it. All right? Go ahead.
The biggest thing that I'm, like, is there a database out there that has all this information about all the franchises and like their reports and stuff like that, or is this you personally?
Good.
Like,
It's a great question. So there are data sites available that give you quantitative objective data. Yes. There are not data sources out there that give you the qualitative issues. So I will tell you, most people who pursue a franchise investigation utilize a consultant to help guide them through, interview them and decide on the criteria, and then make targeted introductions to 3 or 4 or 5 brands. That's how most people pursue this space. Just the same as when you're looking for a house, most people engage a real estate professional because it helps to very quickly screen through all the stuff that doesn't match and focus your attention in a more narrow way on the spaces, on the opportunities that do match. That's what most people do in the space. All right. I'm going to pause there for more questions. I want to be respectful of everybody's schedule. I think we're getting close to, the bottom of the hour. Anybody have any more questions that they want to ask about? Allison, anything online? Okay. All right. Yes.
If there's like a marketing consulting firm that I like a lot, they're called Adjunct Professor of Entrepreneurship. And I want to do the same thing they are doing in India. Is that a business that one is franchisable, like a marketing consulting business?
My gut tells me no, because they probably have a unique set of clients. They might have tools that they use, but they probably have a unique set of clients that's not easily duplicatable in a different market. Yes. The core of franchising is that you're servicing a customer who exists everywhere.
Okay.
Right? Like if I want to go into a Dunkin', people love coffee and donuts in Pittsburgh and Boston and everywhere else. So I can open up a shop to do that in any market. Does that make sense? Okay. Well, I appreciate, for those of you who are live, thank you for being here. For those of you online, I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you.